Creating macros in Excel Visual Basic is fairly straightforward once we know how, but some people don't know we can also create custom functions there. And functions, like macros, can be used to save time and effort by streamlining things we need to do frequently. As usual, we'll start with an open document in Excel here and use the Developer tab to jump directly to the Visual Basic window by clicking the button. We need a module to store the code in, so we can go to the Insert menu here and click on Module. Then we can go to the Insert menu and click on Procedure, which is no longer grayed out. But when the dialog box comes up, we need to do something a little different from an ordinary sub-procedure, the technical term for what we normally do with macros. We're going to click on Function and then tell it we want to give it a name. We're going to use this function to convert Fahrenheit degrees to Celsius, something we need to do pretty regularly, so we can call it something like convert F to C. Now, if we look down in the scope, private items can only be used directly in the current module, but public would allow users to call the function from any other module present in the workbook, so going with public gives us more flexibility. And then we can click OK to get out of the box. Then, up here where we're setting up the code, we have to go between the parens because we have to insert the argument that it needs to work, and that would be Fahrenheit degrees. So if I type in the argument here, I can then specify what precision I want, how many decimals, and so on. I'll tell it that I want to go as single because we need at least a few decimal places for some kinds of calculation. But the only line of code we really need to do the actual calculation, unlike the way a macro works, is something to allow the user's input to be converted from Fahrenheit to Celsius. The formula in the real world is Fahrenheit minus 32 times 5 divided by 9 equals Celsius. Luckily, this doesn't need any complicated math or any concern about order of operations. It works just as it is. So we'll write the formula as VBA requires it. We put in the name of the function to specify what the output is going to go to, and then the equals, and then we tell it in paren here, Fahrenheit minus 32, close paren, times 5 divided by 9. And then if we click in the blank line here, we see the proper spacing comes up. If you want, you can also use a compile button like this one here to check the code. Looks like it came up clean. Then we can jump directly back over to Excel and write a formula which calls up the function we created. So in any cell, I can click. Let's say I want to know what 68 degrees Fahrenheit would come out as in Celsius. So I type equals, and then after I type the first few letters of the function, we see it pops up in the drop-down here just like any ordinary function, and I can give it a double click and then type the number of degrees, 68, and close paren, and hit enter. That's it. The main thing to understand about creating functions in VBA is their structure. A user-defined function is different from a macro in that it works like any regular function, such as sum or VLOOKUP. We call it by writing it into a formula, not with a keyboard shortcut, and we can reuse the code anytime simply by copying and pasting into any other macro-enabled workbook.